Good teachers don't wait until their classroom is completely set up to enjoy their summer. Let's talk about it. So I still remember the first time I didn't spend a long time in my classroom and I actually rested and set up my classroom at the same time. It was my first year in a new district, and that summer I went to Cancun with my then boyfriend, now husband, and we spent a lot of time traveling. And we actually went to this lake cabin in Idaho. We spent a lot of time with families and friends, and I didn't have much time to spend. In fact, I didn't have all those months or several months preparing for back to school. I had small pockets of time while I rested, relaxed, and traveled. So, what I ended up doing is I ended up working from a relaxed space. Whenever I was out traveling, an idea struck me, I would sit down with my journal and write a couple things that would help my classroom. I had taken pictures of my classroom ahead of time and I started designing out the layout of my classroom, thinking which areas would work well together, which ones wouldn't. I started thinking, what do I need in each area? What's going to help my classroom flow easily and minimize distractions? How am I going to organize my paper resources, my digital resources? And I had done all this in small pockets of time. Like I said, if it was on the plane and I had an idea, I would write it out really fast. If I was on a jet ski with my husband and then an idea came to me, I would go back to the cabin and write something down. But it was really this flow of give and take. Relax, an idea and inspiration would strike, and I would go back to enjoying my summer, and then something else would come up. And what's crazy is I remember the school year starting and thinking, oh, I'm not behind. That was actually easier than I thought. By the time I had gotten back from traveling and I had the okay to go in my classroom, I had set up my classroom in about a single weekend, and it wasn't from a rush state like it had been in years before. I had put on my favorite playlist, some podcasts. I had gotten myself a chai and I had the windows open, the doors open, and I was just setting up things that I had already planned out in my journal ahead of time. And it was very relaxed and fun. And it was calm. It was completely different experience than I had experienced in years past. And I remember those first couple weeks thinking, wait, I'm not frantically planning. I'm not frantically printing things out the day of. I'm actually enjoying myself and I'm excited. I'm not burned out and frazzled before my students even get here. And that was way easier than I thought it needed to be. And then that's when I realized, what if how much we work over the summer doesn't determine whether or not we are a good teacher, but doing it from a relaxed space is. So, with that being said, let's talk about it. Hi, my name's Helena, the founder of The Present Teacher and author of That New Teacher Next Door, and welcome to this week's content. I'm so excited you are here. So, as I said earlier, when I had this experience, I realized, what if it didn't have to be that rushed, frantic, spend all summer working and feeling guilty when I finally sat down to read a book or relax? What if I relaxed first and worked second? Because in the past, I had always been scared to do this because I didn't trust myself to actually get the work done. I thought, oh, surely I'm going to put it off to the last minute. But when I just gave myself room to just be and just enjoy my summer, inspiration came, ideas came, things that completely transformed how I ran my classroom came to me because I wasn't frantically trying to set something up. I was working from a relaxed state. And once that happened, I realized this is a much easier way to be and a much better way to be, and I haven't looked back since. So let's look into what actually makes a good teacher. So think of a few good teachers in your life. They can be good teachers who have taught you, coworkers, maybe they're teachers that you look up to online, but I want you to ask yourself, why are they a good teacher? What makes them a good teacher? Is it because they care about their students? Is it that they learn alongside their students? They get better every year. What makes them a good teacher? And the question I have for you is, any of those reasons that you listed because they worked their entire summer and didn't relax and they worked before they had they worked and never rested? No. And that's exactly the point. So, if we don't use working all summer as the standard for a good teacher for others, or having our classroom set up first as the permission slip to being a good teacher, because then we can rest, then why is it okay for us to do that ourselves? Again, if we don't use working all summer as the standard for a good teacher for others, then why is it okay for us to use that standard for ourselves? Is it ultimately true that good teachers only rest after their classroom is set up? Is it written in the stars that you are only a good teacher if you work all summer or work on setting up your classroom first and then relax second? No, that's not true, that's crazy. Are we going up to Teacher of the Year and saying, "Sorry, you went on vacation before you set up your classroom, or you decided to rest before you set up your classroom, so you can't have this title?" No, that's absolutely insane. So, what would be more true? The reality is, I get to come up with my own definition of a good teacher, and a good teacher is someone who might rest before they set up their classroom, or magically, maybe they do both. Maybe they allow themselves to take the time they need to relax and feel rejuvenated and the ideas flow. And then they have this energy to then set up their classroom, but they're not raising their standard or setting the standard of being a good teacher based off of how much work they get done or setting up their classroom first. They allow themselves to rest and work at their classroom at the same time. How does it benefit your students that you don't work on your classroom first, but you rest first? How does that benefit your students? Well, if you do it that way, then you're going to come in more rested. You're going to come in with more excited to see them, fresh ideas, more rejuvenated, relaxed state. Maybe you took time to reflect on the previous year and you've learned so much that you want to implement this year. Maybe taking that space gave you great ideas on things you want to implement this classroom in this school year, and maybe some of those ideas are the ideas that completely transform your career like they have for me. Maybe it allowed you to have space to work on yourself. Maybe it allowed you to calm your nervous system and show up as a calmer, more even person. Maybe you come into the school year more patient. Maybe you had that space for fresh perspectives. So there's another way. There's another way to go about teaching, and that is doing both resting and working on your classroom, not necessarily having to work on your classroom to earn rest. We don't tell our students they have to work to earn rest. Just like we don't tell our kids that they need to work to earn rest. Same idea. There's another way, and that's the poolside teacher way. So they go to a coffee shop, they read a book, they read a whole series of books. They veg out and don't move from the couch for the first 2 weeks of summer. They hang out with friends, they travel, they explore, they live their life, and they work from a relaxed state with a couple minutes a day for a short window. And in those short bursts, they come up with ideas. They're motivated, they're inspired again, they're excited. And then when they finally get the okay or they finally feel ready to set up their classroom, they're not going in thinking, oh, I don't know what to do. They know exactly what they're going to do. They have the plan. They took the space to relax first, set up second. As a recap, today we talked about a couple different things. So the first thing we talked about is what actually makes a good teacher. We talked about, is it ultimately true that good teachers only rest after they set up their classroom? And we just proved that no, good teachers actually do both. How does it benefit your students that you do both at the same time? You don't hold rest as this reward you have to earn by working first. And then we talked about there's another way, the poolside teacher way of relaxing, resting, and working at the same time in small pockets of windows, not working yourself and hustling all summer just to be burned out by the beginning of the year. If you found these tips helpful, I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe and leave a review wherever you're tuning in from so more teachers can get content like this. If you want to take classroom setup a step further and you want to step into that flowy vibe of working just a couple minutes a day from inspiration, make sure to check out my classroom setup guide. It's got your first 10 steps to setting up your classroom from a relaxed state Also, if you want to see what templates I'm using in my classroom and many other teachers are using in their classroom to systematize their classroom and have their classroom work for them, so that way you can automate your classroom and have it run for you by the end of the first month, make sure to check out the Classroom Setup Bundle. It has things like classroom jobs, super improver walls, family communication, things like parent night, teacher night, all sorts of things. So make sure to go check that out. One of the things I really like about it is it has classroom procedures done for you. So what I did is I took the most common classroom procedures teachers are going to use that first month of school, and I actually filled it out for you on how you might teach it, and it's editable. So if there's something in there that you do differently, you can edit it, but I already made the procedures for you. All you have to do is put up the slide, teach it the procedure, and pull it back up later in the year when you need to review, but it's done for you. All you have to do is editing. And editing is a lot faster than creating from scratch. If you want to take it a step further, I am so excited because I'm doing something wild this summer. I'm doing a 14-day experience to setting up your classroom from a relaxed state called the Poolside Teacher. As we talked about, the Poolside Teacher isn't frantically working in their classroom or obsessing over social media for ideas all summer. They're enjoying their life. They're traveling, spending time with friends, their families, their loved ones, catching up on hobbies. And when inspiration hits, they work for 10 minutes here or there. That way, when they finally go into their classroom, they know exactly what they're doing and they can do it in a short amount of time while enjoying their summer. And what I love about this is I'm doing it for $14. $14, and we're going through 4 different phases. The first phase, we're gonna set up your classroom. We're not by going in, but we're gonna design it first. Which areas work well together? Which areas minimize distractions by being put together? Which ones are gonna cause more chaos? How can we set up with the flow in mind? So we're putting on our designer hats, we're taking your classroom, making a model of it, and we're designing it with a plan. That way, when you go in to set up your classroom, you already have a plan on which areas to set up, what to include in those areas, and what that classroom flow is going to look like to minimize distractions. Then we're diving into classroom management. What are you teaching those first few weeks of school to get your students to not only listen to you, but help run the classroom by the end of the month? Then we're talking about organization. We're talking about what does it look like to set up your paper and digital resources to set you up for success? And then the fourth phase we're walking through in the 14 days is how are we planning out those first 2 weeks of school so you're not planning the day of, you already walk into the first day of school with the first 2 weeks planned, prepped, ready to go. So if this sounds like something you would like to join us, we are starting July 15th. And again, it's $14, $1 a day. You get to join me and many other teachers in setting up their classroom from a relaxed space. So if this sounds like something you would like to do, I would love to have you join us. As always, remember we are stronger together, and I'll see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.